Welcome back to our Parenting in a Pandemic series. Last week we had on a couple of our really close friends, Elizabeth Miller and Patty Santos.
Yeah, it was so much fun. We laughed a ton. It was a good time.
We love them. All four of us can't be in a room without laughing constantly.
Ever.
But in between all those laughs, they did share some really great information with us about what it feels like to be a mom during this time, what it feels like to be a parent during this time, and they were able to share some great Bible verses with us. So I hope you felt blessed after last week's series.
Yeah. Now we're moving on to a different part of our show.
That's right. It feels like our local Lovin' segment, Kylie.
Yes, I'm not going to spoil anything, but I will give you one detail. It's about a family in our church, so stay tuned.
Great.
All right, we're back, and I told you that we were going to talk about our family in our church. Well, they are the parents of our children's pastor at our Orange campus. They own a restaurant in Buena Park called Yu's Place. It is Korean Chinese cuisine, and it is delicious. Their sweet and sour pork is my favorite. Now, this family, they love the church. They love the people of the church, and so they offered, if you go to their restaurant, they're going to give you 10% off if you say, I'm from Friends Church, because they just want to love you. That's their passion. That's why they opened their restaurant, was to just have intimate time with families. They wanted to pour into families, create a space where families can come and eat and enjoy time together. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
And I love to go out to eat. That means no dishes. And someone else serves me instead of me serving somebody else. So that's awesome.
Yeah, so check it out, Yu's Place in Buena Park. Now, let's move on to what our topic is today. Will you tell us a little bit about it? Sneak peek?
A little sneak peek, yes. So we're talking a little bit today about a topic that we are all experiencing right now. We're talking about stress and anxiety. And, you know, I think there's not a single person watching right now who hasn't experienced that emotion.
Oh, I have.
Yeah, for
Big
sure.
time, and many occasions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our guest, her name is Heidi Matson, and she's a good friend, a mentor. She's considered a pastor of pastors here at Friends Church, and we are looking forward to have her at the table. So stay tuned. Heidi, I'm so glad you're here with us. Why don't you
Thank you.
tell our parents who you are and a little bit about yourself?
Okay, thanks. My name is Heidi Matson. I'm a marriage family therapist, and I also serve as the Director of Pastoral Health and Development for our Friends Church Southwest denomination that your church is a part of. So it's a very privileged position. I'm super happy to be here today with two of your children's pastors. They're doing a great job and offering you a great service. Personally, I'm a single mom. I have 3 girls. And I understand the stress of parenting. They are all older and grown now, but the joys and the perils of parenting are still ever fresh in my mind, especially having done so much of it alone. So I'm really happy to be able to speak to you guys today about stress and parenting and figuring some of that stuff out together.
All that good stuff.
Sometimes you figure that out as you go.
Oh, most of the time you figure it out as you go. But my favorite book, the title is "And Then I Had Kids," because it's like you have all these like, I'm gonna da-da-da, and then I had kids. I'm gonna, and then I had kids. It's like a total reality jolt to go, oh, okay, let's rework some of that stuff.
Oh, for sure. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've been talking about are the feelings that kids and parents are going through right now that could be new for some families. And stress and anxiety are one of those. Can you just speak a little bit about the stress that this season brings for people?
Yes. Well, first of all, I think it's really helpful. This might sound really basic and kind of silly, but it's really helpful for us just to acknowledge, like, this is a crazy, stressful time. Because there's something in us that keeps trying to make it not stressful. You know, like we're protesting that it's stressful, and we're trying to make it not stressful. But if we can accept, like, hey, we are in some unprecedented times, and it just is what it is, and it's very stressful, that in and of itself puts a framework around some of our emotions and that pinball machine feeling of bouncing back and forth, and helps us immediately kind of go, okay, well, everybody feels some of this, and I'm not making it up, and it's not because I'm inadequate or whatever your other poison is that you drink for yourself. And so to acknowledge that it is a really really stressful time is really important for all of us, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I think a lot of the outlets that people had before at their disposal to relieve some of that stress is gone too. And so things that we used to do to feel comfortable or to relax are just gone. I know my husband and I used to love to go to the movies. And
Yeah.
thankfully now they're starting to open back up again.
Yeah.
But it was just a place where we could sit and be quiet and just veg for a little
Yeah.
bit. So
This time has stretched us all to our capacity
Yeah.
in lots of ways. And there are some gifts in this very ugly season, but you have to mine for them. And we really can learn some things that will help us in the long run, but it has been very taxing. And as you said, Natalie, our normal outlets, we just can't avail ourselves of those. And so we have to learn some new things. The trick is we're a society that runs on adrenaline.
Yep.
And so when everything's shut down, it's like we're all looking for the next adrenaline hit and we don't know where to get it. But it would be really wise of us to learn how to manage our adrenaline better anyway. So as we go into the future, when we hope things resume some measure of normalcy, we've also gained some wisdom and some tools.
Yeah.
You were mentioning the adrenaline rush, and sometimes during this time when that adrenaline rush is gone, it brings up new feelings of anxiety because there isn't that constant intensity, and so people didn't know what to feel in that time. And anxiety feels very different from stress. So I was wondering if you could just speak about the difference between stress feelings and anxiety feelings.
Sure, and stress does trigger your adrenaline. So sometimes the reason we protest, like we were talking about earlier, the stress and try to make it go away is because we're just used to that revved up feeling. We just don't call it stress before because it's running to 3 different sporting events and doing 14 different homework projects and working 2 different full-time jobs. And so stress still causes our adrenaline to run on high, but it just feels different to us. Stress and anxiety share a lot of the same symptoms or expressions, right? Like you feel edgy, your heart is racing, your mind is scattered, you're short of breath. A couple weeks ago, I found myself trying to clean the house, and I was literally like in one room, then I take something to the next room, then I do something in there, and I was finally like, whoa, like time out. Okay, what are you doing? What's like, finish this. And I laughed at myself. I'm like, oh, that it's such a reflection of what's happening inside of me.
Yeah.
Such a reflection of my mind, and even on that day, my spirit. I was just everywhere. So with stress and anxiety, they can feel very similar. Their primary differences are stress is typically external. It's caused by some sort of external stressor. There's a deadline. Dad lost his job. Your kid has a huge school project that they have to finish. Some sort of external stressor. And anxiety, while it responds to external stressors, anxiety is an internal state. And anxiety can be related to a specific stressor. It can be related to the general stress that we're in. But anxiety can also be just this general sense of being unsettled. It can be real and it can be imagined, the trigger for the being unsettled. But it's part of what happens within us, and a lot of people in this time that we've been living through have experienced what we call generalized anxiety, and they've never experienced it before because everything is so uncertain. And so the go-tos that we had before, the routine that we had before, the income that we had before, everything is sort of up for grabs, and that creates this sense of being unsettled inside. So those are like a really basic way to describe the difference.
Yeah. You're talking about unsettlement, and now we can identify it or pause and realize, wow, we are running on stress. But then what, right? What do we do after we've identified it? How do we create that peace that our body so desires?
Yeah, there's a million different ways to answer that question.
Yeah,
so
I'm
we'll,
sure.
we'll try to get to a bunch of them without overwhelming people. But when you're in an anxious or highly stressed state, what's happening is your autonomic nervous system, that fight, flight, or freeze, is switched on all the time. It's like the light switch is just stuck in the on position. And we have to learn to be able to turn that off, or at least down, because that does real damage to us physiologically as well as it can do damage to us emotionally. And anger and anxiety, they are what we call contagious emotions. So it's like your brain responds to the electricity that my brain is producing when I'm anxious, and you can start feeling anxious. And that's why you have such bad days as a whole family, because it's like it's contagious. Even if it's not just in our words, it can be happening on a very sort of electrical, physiological level. So some of the things we need to do is we need to learn how to calm our bodies down. And some of the answers we don't like, but they're just what's true. So if your body is filled with all of that adrenaline and that light switch is on, you have to expend some of that adrenaline in a healthy way. Unhealthy ways we're all clear on. We drink, we yell, we lose ourselves in something else that brings us a hit. But what we really need to do is to be able to physically move. You have to get that energy literally out of your body so that you're huffing and puffing. That can be done in your living room in a multitude of ways. That can be done in your own backyard safely. It doesn't require you going to an expensive gym, but it does require that you physically move your body in such a way that it expels some of that, because your body was not meant to contain all of that all the time. So with children, that's going to mean, especially when school right now is on Zoom, it's going to mean you require recess, but recess has to be, full on exertion. So one of my children, when she was little, she was just that kid who had tons of energy. And so on rainy days when everyone was cooped up inside, I was like, okay, put your boots on, put your raincoat on, Mama's made an obstacle course for you in the backyard. And I would just tell her, okay, I want you to run around the patio chair 3 times. Then I need to do your best bunny hops all the way to the swing set. And I would just make up an obstacle course. Right. Because she had to expel some of that energy because it was just too much in her system. So physical activity is really important. We can't drug ourselves. What's your drug of choice? Alcohol, sugar, complex carbohydrates, which just break down to sugar, or you might be struggling with something even far more pernicious and less socially acceptable than those. But those things ultimately cave in on us. They're seductive because they promise to rescue you, but what they really do is they hold you captive. And they just cause the process to get deeper and deeper. So we've got to watch our sugar intake, how much we're drinking, and any other substance kinds of things we're going to, or what we call process addictions. This has been a rough time for people who struggle with pornography because you're home and the TV's on, or you're by yourself a lot. So we just have to be aware of choosing healthy ways to expend some of that energy.
Definitely. And I think an important thing to remember too is that we have to take care of ourselves if we're going to take care of our families. Self-care is just such an important thing right now, and I think moms especially, but parents in general, feel guilty about is it okay if I take a day off from the kids, especially when these parents are with their kids. I know you're with your kids 24/7. I'm so sorry. Parenting is an amazing gift, but it's also a gift meant to be shared. And I feel like parents need to be able to give themselves that space to take time and care for themselves and share the responsibility of raising the kids with the other people that love them.
Yeah, that it's super, super important. And if we want to just be really blunt about it, right? Take a day off from your kids or kill them, right? Okay, just taking a day off, right? So, but self-care is really important because there's this great phrase that I use all the time: you can't serve what you're not cooking. So if it's empty in here and you're operating on fumes, all you're able to give your children are fumes. So it's a little bit of an overused analogy right now, but I think that's because it's just the one that is the clearest, and most of us have experience with it. And that is, when you're in an airplane, what do they always say? Put your oxygen mask on first before you put your child's oxygen mask on, right? So self-care looks like I put that oxygen mask on me and then I turn my attention to my children. It does not look like I put the oxygen mask on me and then I go searching in my purse for my lipstick and my favorite gum and all the other things that make me feel comfort before I get to my child, right? So self-care can be selfish depending on how we do it, but by its nature, its intention is not selfish. Jesus modeled it for us all the time by getting away alone to a quiet place, by going to be alone with his disciples, by keeping his relationship with God the Father intimate, so that he could walk the path that God had given for him. So self-care is really important. And another thing I would say about self-care is we can't look at it like, I mean, who doesn't want a spa day right now, right? Anybody?
Wish.
Right? Or if you're a dude, like, who doesn't want to just be like, I'm peacing out for 18 rounds of golf and then dinner with the guys, and then we might go even do something after that. If you can take a mini vacation for a day, I mean, perfect. Do it. Go for it. But self-care isn't about like holding your breath and waiting to exhale until you get that day.
Yeah.
Self-care is about small decisions you make throughout every single day to care for yourself. And that's a concept that I think is really important for us to understand, because I think a lot of us are like holding our breath waiting for COVID to go away.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of doing the things we need to do every day to take care of ourselves. So that may look like, you know, have you ever put yourself in timeout, Natalie? You know, I remember saying to my kids, like, Mommy has to go to timeout.
Yeah.
I'm behaving badly. I have to go to timeout for a few minutes.
go.
You know, so sometimes it just means like, hey, everybody, just for 5 minutes, I'll put the timer on. I just need everybody to, whether it's go to their rooms, sit quietly in a different part. If you have a child who needs to see you, because that's their nature. I had one child, I just needed to be in their line of sight. But it was just like, let's just everybody take 5 minutes, and you can color, we're gonna breathe. Mommy's just gonna sit here and read her book for 5 minutes. But those kind of points of where you can hit the reset button all day long are really, really important for you to think about some strategies for your family rather than waiting for the big vacation day.
Yeah. And I think really something important that you said is verbalize that with your kids.
Yeah.
Tell them, I am at my wit's end. I am about to lose my mind. I just need a minute. Because for me, modeling that for your kids, modeling the fact that everybody gets to that point, and then realizing when you get to that point and you need to take a break, I think modeling that for your kids is just so important.
It is.
Not only does it validate the feelings that they're having of stress and anxiety, but it also shows them what to do in that situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's really important that we teach our kids that ability to self-regulate.
Right.
So when you're in a moment of stress, what do you want? You just want them to obey what you're telling them to do. You know, but really the overall arching goal of parenting, right, is that I raise a child who's able to know themselves and regulate themselves and manage themselves. Why? Because the bottom line is, I want to raise a child who knows how to love and be loved.
Amen.
That's the crux of everything. And to be in a loving relationship and to be a loving person, I have to be able to manage myself well.
Yeah. So as adults, we can learn how to manage ourselves really well. But for kids, if we aren't giving them that example, or if we haven't talked to them about it before, how do we, you know, now translate from something we've learned and then now teach them? How do we teach them, like, how to manage themselves? And kids act out. That's usually where their stress
I act
shows. They explode, they throw things, they scream, they yell about something that they shouldn't be yelling about. And so, yeah, if we identify that these little explosions are happening within them, we can see that it's stress. Now, how do we now teach them how to calm and manage themselves?
It's such an important question. And some of it will depend on the age of your child.
Yeah, of course.
But when we were just talking a little bit ago about that on switch being the fight, flight, or freeze, just being flipped on all the time, that high level of stress, cortisol, adrenaline, anxiety, and we have to expel some of that physically. What we also have to learn as parents, and sometimes this is hard for us, is that we can't always start with trying to get our kids to think about something that we're saying, to get them to start what we call top down, to change their minds so they can change their behavior. With kids, we sometimes have to go bottom up. So we have to change what's happening in their body so that then they can engage their minds. Because if their minds are just flooded with too much anger, too much anxiety, too much frustration, too much stress, then you're telling them to do something and their mind's like, one of the root words of anxiety means to be fractured. Now, if you've ever been anxious, you know, like, oh, that is totally how it feels, right? Like my mind is going in all these millions directions and I can't quite pull it together. If that's true, if you're talking to a child who their mind is fractured by what's happening within them and you're trying to make them think differently so they can obey, on some level, they can't. So you got to work with their bodies first so they can engage their minds. It's bottom up rather than top down. So some of that again is physical moving. Some of that for some kids might be containing, like they really need like a big old strong bear hug. Everybody, adults, children, everybody, we need to learn how to breathe. The strangest thing happens when we're anxious and stressed. We start having very shallow breathing and we're not even aware of it. Mm-hmm. So when I'm sitting with a client, for example, I'll just say, are you aware right now that your breathing changed? Because they're talking about something that creates some anxiety for them and their breathing just got very shallow. So teaching our kids, like breathe in for 4, hold it for 4, exhale for 4. And if we sort of do that all together, it helps. It helps everybody calm down. Visual aids are really helpful to children. They're helpful to a lot of us who are visual learners, but they're helpful to children. So I brought 2 that might help you. So if you have like older kids, middle school, or even high school, a good analogy, a good picture for them is to say like, your girlfriend didn't call you back. Your teacher is being totally unreasonable. Dad yelled at you because he had a bad day at work. And now what happens if I take the lid off? This explodes all over everyone, right? Yeah. And you can make it fun. You can go outside with your kids and like point it at them and be like, you know, what's going to happen if I take
that might
that
be freeing
lid off?
for you too.
You know, it's going to explode everywhere. And then to be able to say like, I can't and you can't control if your teacher's unreasonable. And you don't know what's going on with your girlfriend and why she shouldn't call you back, but you don't have control over that. And school's going to be, it's rough this year. It's just going to be rough. We're going to have a hard time. We can't control that. But what we can control is how we turn the lid. Are we going to do it a little bit at a time so that we start expending some of that in there, letting some of that out so it doesn't just blow all over everyone. And you might even be able to say, like yesterday, when you like totally let your brother have it, yeah, see, you just took the lid off, man, and soda went flying all over him. You felt better, but he had soda all over him. So we have to learn to turn that lid ever so slightly. And then you have to work with your child, because everybody's child has an individual personality, and say, what does turning this lid slowly look like for you? You know, where do you want to put words to that? You may not want to put words to that with me, your mom.
Yeah.
I'm probably part of what's shaking you up. But you have to put words to it somewhere, because our older kids, they have to start knowing how to put their words to it. Do you want to do that in a song? Do you want to do that in an angry letter that you write and then tear up? What other ways can you just partially turn that lid? I think you need to go run or shoot a bunch of hoops or whatever their thing is, and you just help them learn ways that they turn the lid a little bit each time, so that the explosions stop happening. For younger kids, this is a super fun one. They love it. So there's glitter in this jar of water, and you can say like, today really like shook you up. You know, you got upset because your brother poured soda all over you because he exploded on you, right? And you just are so tired of sitting at the computer and doing school, and you really want mommy to be able to give you all of her attention, and you're just all shaken up inside. And when you're yelling at me and not doing what I ask and throwing tantrums, this is what it looks like and feels like. Can you feel that? So let's just stop for a minute. Let's just breathe and watch that glitter slowly calm down and go to the bottom. And as it goes to the bottom, let's just take a couple of breaths in, hold it, out, and then you can say, hey, most of the glitter is on the bottom. There's only a little bit left on the top. I think these are the things that we are supposed to focus on right now. Let's talk about what those things might be, because these things we'll get to later. Life's going to keep shaking us up. We will get to them. Let's talk about what these are. And you do that collaboratively. Collaboration is really important to deal with stress because connection builds resiliency. And so you do that in a collaborative way. What might those things be? And if they give you some crazy ideas, you go, maybe. How about this? And you offer them some more reasonable, ideas. But doing it collaboratively will help. So visuals like this can really help kids. It can be a way for them to understand what the breathing does for them, and just to kind of separate the issues of what you need to deal with right now and what you can deal with later. But you have to think bottom up.
Yeah.
That'd be the phrase.
Yeah.
Bottom up, so that we can get our minds working. Eventually their minds have to work. They have to cooperate. They have to do what they have to do.
Yeah.
You have to help them think about it. But it's unreasonable to ask someone to think about it when they're in the middle of a total storm in their head.
Yeah. With that tool, I think it would be fun for you as parents to get your kids involved in even prepping this activity. Have them pick out the glitter, have them pick out their jar, have them involved, and so they really want to understand what you're doing with this jar. It's not just this random thing you're bringing into their life, but they have ownership in it too, and so they can feel the being a part of it and being able to really want to calm down with your little glitter jar.
That's
So,
a great
it's so
idea,
fun.
Kyla. That's a great idea.
And I think a beautiful thing about it too is that it's something that they can carry with them, carry on with them. I mean, I feel like I'd be doing parenting right if my kids had a jar of glitter on their desk at work.
Always.
In their 20s, at their new job, the first thing they plop on their desk is a jar of glitter, and only so that they can still feel that the bottom up emotions throughout life. So you're doing your job right if when your kids are 20, they have a jar of water and glitter on their desk.
I want a jar with glitter.
I know, I think
I was watching Heidi and I was like, I'm here with you.
I was
calm.
breathing with her when she was doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know when we were talking earlier, Heidi, you mentioned an acronym HALT. If
Yes.
you could just speak really quickly to that, we would appreciate that.
Yeah, so one of the things that helps us manage our stress is if we know our triggers. There are some universal triggers, and there are some specific triggers to each one of us. Some of our universal triggers we actually learned from our recovery community, from Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's an acronym called HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Those are 4 points of stressors and vulnerabilities that if we don't pay attention to, if we don't respond to, they can easily send us on a path toward whether that's an addiction, or whether that's that we're exploding, or whether that we implode internally on ourselves. Whatever our typical response to stress and anxiety is, those 4 things, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, can really send us there. Now, you can replace angry with anxious, because anger and anxiety share so much physiologically until the end, and then they kind of split apart. So it still applies to anxiety as well. And then we have to be willing to be self-reflective enough to sort of know what our own triggers are. For me, I know that being too busy is a trigger.
Yeah.
Kind of like when I shared with you that I was running around the house like a mad person, really not cleaning anything, 'cause I was so scattered. Being too busy, I'm not my best self. And so that's a trigger for me. And usually I can tell because of the way that I'm reacting, or because my mind is never turning off. And so then I say to myself, it is time to reset. So, for example, just in these last couple weeks, I have a daughter getting married very soon. I have a big work event coming up next week. There's been a multitude of health issues. There's just been 1,000,010 things. And a lot is required of me right now. And sometimes life is just like that, right? The glitter gets shaken up, the soda's getting, totally shaken in my life. So what I decided was that every lunch hour for 20 minutes, I was sitting still and calm in silence, and I was breathing, and I wasn't working, and I wasn't making frenetic phone calls. I just was taking 20 minutes to just be entirely still and to not be running on adrenaline. Because after lunch hour, I was going to have to run on adrenaline again. But I needed some space in my life to just hit the reset button and be calm. So you need to understand your own personal triggers, but you can also pay attention to hungry, angry or anxious, lonely, and tired.
That's great. I think that gives us some really great talking points with our kids, things to think about. What I really just want those that are watching today in this moment is to just know that that feeling is validated, that that stress, that anxiety, you are not alone in feeling that. Heidi is someone who I consider an expert on stress and anxiety, and as you heard her say, even she has those feelings. So it doesn't absolve her of feeling stress and anxiety, it just gives her the tools to know how to manage it and deal with it. And so we're hoping today that you guys were able to glean some of those tools, that you can share them with your kids and use them at home.
Yeah.
And just really learn that stress and anxiety are all normal feelings. We all feel them, even the best.
Yeah, so we're going to close out today, but is there one more little thing of encouragement you can tell our parents right before we have Natalie pray us out?
Can I make it two?
Yes,
Two.
you
You can
can.
have two.
When you're an expert, you can do that.
You can have
Heidi.
two.
You know that book, Everything I Needed to Know, I learned in kindergarten, that Shel Silverstein book that has been famous for so many years now. It has been coming to my mind over and over during this time. Because one of the things I really want to encourage you to do is to just be kind. Be kind to yourself. Lower your expectations. We can't think that we're going to live through this crazy, unusual time and still expect all the same things. That's an unworkable situation. So we have to be kind to ourselves and then kind to those around us. What we're seeing in our society is that due to the level of uncertainty, people's anxiety and people's anger are just off the charts. And those are contagious. And so they just keep proliferating. But if we can just go back to kindergarten and know that one of the most important things we can do is to be kind to ourselves, pay attention to that very critical voice you might have inside your head that always tells you you have to be better or you're not good enough, or that gets turned on other people, and just practice genuine kindness, that will really help us in the level of stress we feel. And the second thing I want to say is I really want you to, good decisions are made when we can back our way into them. Like, what is the end result that I want?
That's good.
Because then I can think about what I need to get there. If I'm just reacting to everything in the moment, I might be making the best decision I can in the moment, but when I can step back and get a little bit of perspective and say, where do I want to end? And that's what I would say to you as parents. Like, when you come out of this season, what is it you really want to have? Does your kid need to still be the best speller? Do they still need to be the premier athlete? Do you still need to have the mostly beautifully decorated house? And, I'm naming shallow things, but whatever your thing is. Or do you want to know that your family built some resiliency together? And that you have some memories from this time of how you all connected and adapted and learned to love and be loved even more deeply, because that's really the end game. The rest of the things we'll catch up on, but that's the thing we really want. So back your way into the decisions that you make and be kind to yourself and others.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Thank
Heidi.
you.
I'd like to close this in prayer.
Yeah.
You guys don't mind?
Yeah.
All right. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Heidi, for her words of wisdom that she shared with us today, Lord. And thank you so much for the example of Jesus. As Heidi shared, he was such a beautiful example of taking time away, taking peace to be with you, taking quiet times to be alone. And I just want to pray over our families today that are watching this, Lord, that they give themselves the same grace and the same peace that the Jesus we follow did, Lord. I just pray that you'll help them to feel normalcy in the feelings of stress and anxiety, Lord. The entire world is feeling it. And more importantly, Lord, I ask that they come to you in those times, that they can be moments of connection, both with their family and with you, Lord. I pray that you give parents the tools and the words that they need in order to guide their kids through this time. And more importantly, I just pray your love and your guidance over every family watching this video and across the world, Lord. We pray all of these things in your blessed name. Amen.
Amen. Well, today was wonderful. I feel like I gained so much, and I'm sure all of you guys gained so much. But join us again next week as we're going to learn about internet safety. It's a big one during this time. Your kids are home on their computers and are using technology in ways they've never before. And so we're excited to be back with you guys next week.
Hey friends, there's one more thing that I need to say before we entirely close this session. And that is, if you or your children are in any kind of danger, you need to take action, and you need to take action today. I know it takes a lot of courage, but this has been a stressful time, and stress can sometimes rear its head up in domestic abuse or in suicidal feelings. If those are a part of your family experience in any way, I want you to know there's help available, real help. You can call Friends Church. We have an entire list of resources. We also have pastors who any of us would be willing to meet with you, to care for you, to pray for you. But don't let one more day go by. If you're feeling like you might hurt yourself, or you might hurt someone else, or you're aware that your children are being hurt by someone else, we can't let our stress end up with perilous harm to any of us. You're loved, you're not alone, so make sure that you reach out. Thank you.